Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Taylor, and first of all, to the Brandywine Group, thank you for those that were able to attend the Zoom meeting last Tuesday. I will do another Zoom for week 5. The Zoom had some good and bad effects. The good effects, we were able to iron out all the kinks for the video and audio. The bad, the recording did not take any of the PowerPoints or the YouTube videos. So this is something we'll have to work out for 5, so that's why I have to make this quick video now. So I wanted to give you an overview and a recap of what we covered and moving forward. So in Module 3, we covered Part 1 of mental health issues, and this clip art, or actually this photo actually says it all, the war within. And it truly is a war within, because these veterans come home physically looking fine, but with much suffering going on in the inside that will most likely carry with them for the rest of their lives. And it's up to us to help them deal with those issues, find out how these issues, the cause, assess for high risk, be proactive in treatment, be a support, and be an advocate. I would like to point out some special learning activities. Remember that for, just tomorrow evening, Monday night, the guidelines for Part 1 and 2 of the final case study project. But of course, your Part 1 is due tomorrow, which is your interview. And these are the resources. And of course, the resources are also in your assignment area. Be sure that your assignment is in on time. And I hope that you were able to identify good veterans from 2 different war eras, that you can have a good, strong interview from both that you can use for your final project. In the content overview, please be sure to click on the link. And when you click on the content overview, I love this quote by Maya Angelou: "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." And that pretty much says it all. There is the untold story, a story that is requiring continued research. I'm going to say a little bit more about that in a minute. Let's just address this first. A couple sentences. Although veterans have provided a great service for our country, their service may have come at a great price, with both physical and mental health concerns. So the next 2 modules will focus on these critical issues that they face, both mental and physical. I want you to be sure to go through these different content overviews, especially the piece on suicide. I have updated this for links that are really, really important resources that you can use for yourselves, your families, and of course, more importantly, your clients. Little piece on PTSD. Of course, the module itself has a ton of information on PTSD, what factors and who develops it, barriers to care. But what I want to point out specifically here, because I do have a ton of resources, like I said, on PTSD within the actual homepage module, is traumatic brain injury and how traumatic brain injury has changed over the course of the years, especially now that we have high-velocity weapons. You're going to see much more information showing up as the research unfolds, new findings that we are somewhat amazed, sometimes troubled, but all in all, it will help us treat these veterans coming back with these situations. And polytrauma. When you think of traumatic brain injury and you think of the high velocity weapons, such as improvised explosive devices, what we're seeing is polytrauma, much more trauma than we have seen in previous war eras. And it's up to us to recognize these different traumas. And the biggest part about the polytrauma is that they're surviving. While we know that that's a good thing, any life is special and precious, but these survivors are surviving without limbs, and not to mention the unseen afflictions, which are mental health problems, especially in the form of depression, chronic pain, and so forth. So let's get back to the homepage. And talking about the different effects, I want you to take note of this particular article, Complexity of Relationships. I have the article here. Let's see if we can open it up. Nope, that's not the article. That's my Word document. Here you go. This is the article. This is hot off the press. I would hope that you would use this as your foundational article for Module 3 and 4. This this research was just published. This research was done all the way up until the end of 2016, and it was just published in early 2018. So literally it is hot off the press. And what I want to point out to you is the complexity, as I had mentioned, of the relationships of pain, post-traumatic stress, and depression in combat injured populations. Now, what this means is now we are finding that there is an association, or I like to call it the clinical triad, between pain, PTSD, and traumatic brain injury, or TPI, especially in the Operation Enduring Freedom and operations, I always forget what that means, Iraqi freedom. So this article will really help you understand what we're doing now for these clients. And as you can see, this is research that took place from 2001 to 2016, actually looking at the outcomes of combat injured persons and helping us understand the complex interrelationships between the combat injuries, physical health, and mental health systems. And this is something that we're understanding more and more, and we're also understanding more about how pain, PTSD, and depression all play into the outcomes of these particular veterans. They're also finding more and more that proactive treatment of pain, different drugs such as ketamine, is helping to decrease the incidence of depression, of other mental health illnesses such as PTSD. Also, we're looking at better screening methods, because those people that are predisposed to having mental health issues, they're finding if they understand that when these these military people are first enlisted, they can better assess them and be on the lookout for if they were in a situation where they experienced combat injuries from high velocity weapons, such as the improvised explosive devices. They'll know that they need immediate treatment. So it's important for you to understand the literature, especially the newer literature. Also, I'd like to point out, with this new literature is also new scientific research. This was a fabulous piece I found that was just done on 60 Minutes just a few months ago. And it focuses on this particular Marine. And what I'd like for you to do is to watch this video. It's around 10 minutes. And let me tell you, it is powerful. This particular Marine has a powerful story. And it goes from when he was first injured from an IED, the physical and mental problems he encountered, how he dealt with them, how scientific research is now understanding what post-traumatic stress is all about.
Sponsor.
And now, even more so, I want to go back to the page, they're finding a link, as you can see here, to CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. This is something that football players experience. But what they're finding now is that improvised explosive devices cause an exponential level of harm to the brain for traumatic brain injury, so much more than they're finding in football players. So that video explains all that, in addition to hearing that particular veteran's story. It's good, it's emotionally touching, but it's very informative for us from a healthcare perspective and from a research perspective. And this particular article that I had asked you to use as the foundational article is also good for research because it's explicit with methodology, and it's a good teaching tool for those of you who will be taking research moving forward. In this particular module is also a huge piece about suicide. Obviously, suicide affects 20 veterans every single day. They succumb to suicide. It's up to us to be proactive, to be able to be supportive, to be advocates, to give them resources. Now, I have 3 PowerPoints that I made, and the PTSD PowerPoint is fabulous because what it will do, it helps you define PTSD. examine how the military personnel are adjusting, moving into civilian life. It discusses the relationship, identifies risk factors, diagnostic measures, of course, nursing measures, explains the biological, psychological, and social effects of PTSD, and special conditions in relations involved in PTSD. There's also a piece on suicide among veterans, and I want you to understand when you go through this PowerPoint about suicide, understand the different behaviors. Look at the differences in suicide, such as suicide ideation, how it's different from having an actual plan or an attempt. You'll note in your readings that those that have a plan really need to have your eyebrows raised and call someone and call the suicide hotline, because chances are these people, they want to do the job. Ideations, of course, that's cause for concern because ideation sometimes leads to a plan. But this one is really somewhat sad because suicide attempt is usually a cry for help. And interestingly, most people that attempt suicide really don't want to kill themselves. They just want to bring attention to themselves. But unfortunately, they succeed. 40% of women attempt suicide, and only 10% of men. However, men are more likely to succeed just because of the sheer fact that they have more access to weapons and so whatnot. So the point of the matter is, it's something that we need to understand. Now, please go through these slides and align them with the readings and the different links that I shared in your modules. Now, when you go through the module, you'll also see a suicide prevention plan. This prevention plan is a fabulous overview. It's called The Power of One, and it talks about supportive services for veterans and their families. Now, remember, we have to include families in treatment of veterans, especially with mental health issues, because support and advocacy is probably the best way for us to work with veterans. They have to know that there is help out there. They have to know that there is no stigma, that we are willing to accept them for what they are. The old adage was, man up. You don't talk about mental health illness. You're categorized as weak. Well, that's no longer the case. Men and women need to know that we understand what they went through and how we can support and advocate for them. So I want you to know that this particular PowerPoint is wonderful. It's from the Veterans Health Administration. It's a crisis hotline information. It's a wonderful source. It's a wonderful resource. I don't know where it went. I lost it. But in any event, here you go. It's something that you want to use for your clients, for your patients, and probably even for family members. It even has a toolkit for how to start a suicide prevention plan in your own community. Wonderful statistics for those people who like to know the facts, and the facts are there, and it just gives you a ton of good information. I wanted you to know that that is in your module. A ton of other stuff that's in your module, especially links. I talked about ketamine. It's something that's not prescribed over the counter yet, not so much over the counter from your physician, but it's something they use in the hospitals. And they were surprising. It was a surprising finding that they found that ketamine also treats depression. It's an amnesic. It's a great anesthetic on top of being a great pain control. So this is something you want to learn more about as we move forward. You're going to be seeing that more and more. There's wonderful stories in these links of real veterans experiencing these mental health issues. And please share, please engage in these videos, especially the suicide prevention program, which is Veterans Helping Veterans. There are other items that I think you will find helpful. You can, pick and choose what you want. They're all valuable, and they'll all help with your journaling and discussions. And you'll note in Module 4, there's an extension to mental health, of amputation, pain, end-of-life care. In this, again, we talk a lot about what we talked about in Module 3, but we're extending it out to veterans with chronic pain and amputations. Please make sure you go through the content overview You'll find wonderful, wonderful information about how patients are dealing and how they are dealing within their families, and of course, end of life issues. I hope you found this informative, and I'll be talking to you soon.